Dear President Zelenskyy, dear Volodymyr, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Prime Minister Morawiecki, dear Mayor Isabella Keupen, dear Dr. Linden, ladies and gentlemen. When you enter the city of Aachen and look at the wealth of ancient landmarks and monuments, you can almost feel with all of the senses the weight of European history, its violence and its beauty, its pain and its progress, its centuries-old divisions and its decades-young unity. This prize, as the founder Kurt Pfeiffer put it, embodies an obligation of the highest ethical value to make the next chapter of our common history better than the last one. That obligation is for a strong union of Europeans, quote, to defend the highest earthly goods, freedom, humanity, and peace, and safeguard the future of the children and children's children, unquote. The person and the people that we are recognizing today have lived up to that obligation that any one of us ever could. They are literally fighting for freedom, humanity, and peace. They are bleeding and they are laying down their lives to safeguard the future of their children and of ours. President Zelenskyy and the people of Ukraine know exactly what they're fighting for, and they have understood what Europe and our union is all about. My words cannot really do justice to this. Well, far from it, but those of President Zelenskyy can. In his remarkable inauguration address in 2019, he told the people of Ukraine, and I quote, "We have chosen a path to Europe. But Europe is not somewhere out there. Europe is here, in our minds. And after it has appeared here once, it will be everywhere, all over Ukraine." Unquote. President Zelenskyy, Volodymyr, I am firmly convinced that those words will come true, and we will not stop working to make sure they do. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of pain comes with strength and courage. Ukraine has shown this every single day since that fateful morning when Russia sent tank columns and tens of thousands of soldiers across the border. When I met Volodymyr Zelenskyy in a shell-shocked Kyiv a few weeks later in the government neighborhood, I had just come back from Bucha. I had just seen the mass graves next to the church, the body bags lined up tightly together, the early cruel symbols of Putin's war. I will never forget the image of those innumerable candles everywhere, each of which represented a mother or a father, a son or a daughter, a brother or a sister, alive, senselessly extinguished. people's feelings were despair and anger. But they also had a firm belief, the belief that Ukraine was fighting back and turning the tide. When I spoke to President Zelensky in those early days, I called him many times, and I knew about his courage and his determination in those bleak early days. But on that day in Kyiv, when I looked into his eyes for the first time, I was deeply touched by the steadfast determination he exuded. President Zelensky had and has the unshakable belief that those fighting for something will always be stronger than those fighting to impose their rule. And this is why, because of this courage and this determination, the victims and the values, I cannot think of a more befitting winner of this Charlemagne Prize than President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine are fighting for exactly the values and the obligation that this prize embodies. And in doing so, they're also fighting for our own freedom and our values, democracy and the rule of law, free speech, and the freedom to create your own destiny. This is what Ukraine is fighting for. And this is what President Putin is trying to extinguish. President Putin is destroying the work of peace that we have built together since the end of the Second World War and later after the fall of the Iron Curtain. Putin aims to destroy the Europe created by Charlemagne Prize laureates such as Guy Lahorn and Václav Havel, François Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl, and many others. Putin tries to unravel the events of 1989 and the decades since, which saw the people of Europe tear down the Iron Curtain and Europe changed its face forever. As historian and Charlemagne Prize laureate Timothy Garton Ash put it so well. Every generation has its moment when it has to stand up to defend democracy and what it believes in. For us, this moment has come. And just as the courageous freedom fighters changed the face of our continent in Europe a little more than 30 years ago, today it is us, our actions, that will decide what our Europe will look like in future. The Ukrainian people have revealed to the world the strength of their society, their will to fight and to be free. This has amazed the world. Their ironclad certainty where they belong is fascinating. It's an inspiration for all of us. For a decade, the civil society people in the Ukraine have been the architect of Ukraine's move towards the European Union. And never can we match the sacrifice and the bravery of the Ukrainian people, but we can stand firmly by their side. I'm not just talking about the tens of billions of euros of support to Ukraine, the sweeping sanctions against Russia, or the modern weapons and ammunition that we have pledged and delivered. I am also talking about accompanying Ukraine on its path towards our union and getting it ready for the future, even though the war is raging. I'm thinking also of the countless Europeans who've opened their homes and their hearts for Ukrainian refugees. 4 million people have found temporary shelter after leaving their homeland because of Putin's bombs. And I would like to thank and recognize the many volunteers. I would like to pay my respect to the cities and municipalities, the teachers and sports clubs who integrated Ukrainian children into their groups, and the countless enterprises that gave work to their parents. This is Europe at its best. Ladies and gentlemen, it is thanks to President Zelensky, thanks to the people of Ukraine, and thanks to all of us sticking together that Europe's face is changing once again. Ukraine incarnates everything the European idea is standing for. The courage to stand in for one's convictions, the fight for values and freedom, the commitment and the struggle for peace and unity. This is why I'm convinced that Ukraine will prevail. It will win peace and make its European destiny come true as part of our European family. Dear Alexandra Matvichuk, you, a few days ago in Vienna, said the following, and I quote, "People in Ukraine want peace more than anyone else, but peace does not come when the country that was attacked lays down its weapons. That's not peace. That's occupation. And occupation is just war in another form, just as bad as war." Unquote. You are so right. In our EU, we speak many different languages, 24 of them. But in all of them, victory translates as peace and justice. Just peace. As has always been the case with Europe, there will be skeptics saying that it is impossible, it's a fantasy. But what if this is in fact our duty, our task to unite and make the impossible possible against all odds? Those words are again from President Zelensky. We speak of a victory, he said, when the guns fall silent and people are raising their voices. Unquote. He was back then talking about Ukraine. But these words also describe Europe and what it stands for, our Europe. So what if this was our idea? If it was our task of our Europeans to stand together and make the impossible possible. With today's prize, we are sending out a clear message. We stand by the side of President Zelensky. We stand by the side of the people in Ukraine. We stand by their side until we together achieve the impossible. Slava Ukraina. Long live Europe.